files, but there we go. All right, let me pull this up. Okay. Okay, so sorry, I was like, we can kind of go a little bit slower now because I feel like we're less under the gun from like we were kind of running out of time. So I was like, oh, like hurry. Up to this point though, do any of you have any questions, or do you like want me to go over anything like more in depth?
No, at this point, I just want to see it from start to finish as much as possible.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to get like through all the CRUD on both models in one session, even like today. But yeah, we'll keep going. We'll go as far as we can. I think I can go until about probably 6:15, 6:30 or so. If any of you just need to like take off, you just hop off. I won't be offended. You just leave, because I'll post this online too. So
where does it get posted?
I will post it on YouTube, and once it's uploaded to the channel, I'll post a link in the help desk Slack channel.
Okay, in that case, I might need to leave then, but thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, you'll be able to watch this whole thing, and I'll post all of the code on GitHub, so you can look at that and use that for reference.
Awesome, much appreciated. Thank you, Taylor.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and keep going. I'm trying to remember where exactly we were. Let's see. Okay, so we got all of our Pokemon trainers with C Grimes down here listed here. So again, it's come from the props. We're just mapping over each of the trainers in that array. We're saying start with the first one, render a div in H2 for that trainer name, go to the next one, render a div in H2 for that trainer, just done all the way down. So that's what that's doing. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do, I think, is, let's see, we're doing that. What's something? Okay, let's actually now go into maybe, let's make each of these clickable. So we can click on each of these trainers' names, and maybe it'll take us to a page that will be for that specific trainer. And maybe what we can do is we can have that page have the trainer name, also maybe have their hometown, which is like that location parameter that we added. And then maybe we could also list out all of the Pokemon for that trainer, like on the trainer show page, which I think could be kind of cool. So let's do that. So let's see, just make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to make each of these clickable, obviously, and we want to be able to send the user to a specific user show page or a trainer show page. So that is going to correspond really cleanly to one of our routes, and that is going to be the show route. So the show route, again, is to show or to have a page or to show the information of just one instance of our model and a specific instance. Like we want to be able to choose one of our models and then look at a page that has the data for that model. That's what the show method does. And we can see this, we have that here. We have, when we hit our trainers controller and we have like the show method, there's a corresponding URL for that right here. And it's trainers/ID. That ID is going to correspond to a specific trainer ID. So if we go to localhost 3000/trainers/ an ID that belongs to a trainer, it should go to that specific trainer's page. So let's use this URL and let's kind of make the trainer name for each of our trainers clickable and link to their specific URL. And we're actually going to make that URL dynamic. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So I'm going to set up my href here. And what we're going to need to do actually is in this URL, we're going to need to interpolate some of our data into that URL to make it dynamic. So whenever we do string interpolation, we have to use our backticks. So I'm actually going to do the curly brace first because this is actually going to be JavaScript. I'm going to add in my backticks, and then I'm going to fill out my URL. So it's going to be /trainers, I believe. So trainer show /trainers and then /ID. So / and ID there. However, we don't just want to put ID there. We want this to be an actual number. And we want that number to change based on the trainer that is shown and that is being clicked on. We can get access to that because, remember, our trainers, and I'll show you in our schema, our trainers obviously have the name and location. I guess it's not in our schema. That's actually, that's interesting, but it will be here. Yeah. So you can see that our trainers have a name and a location. We set up those attributes to be part of that model. Also, and this is kind of how Ruby on Rails and like databases and backends work. Whenever you create an instance of a model, it also gives it an ID, and that just happens automatically. We don't tell it to do that. We don't specify that it needs to have an ID field. That just happens automatically. So we have access, just like when we do like trainers.name, we can do trainer.id and have access to that specific trainer's ID number. So that is what we're going to use here, is we're going to use string interpolation in JavaScript, which unlike Ruby, which uses a hashtag and curly braces, we're going to do the $sign and curly braces. And then we're going to do trainer.id, just like that. And I messed up, there we go, I missed a closing bracket. Cool. All right, so we set up our href. It's going to go to this URL /trainers/ whatever ID is, whatever ID belongs to the trainer that I clicked on. I want to surround that entire trainer name in that tag. So I can grab that last one. There we go. Oops. Oh, this was cool.
I have to go, but thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, no worries. See you, Sydney. All right, cool. So now we've got that set up. So now if we go back to here, hit refresh, these should all be hyperlinked now. So they should look blue. And when we click on each one, it should take us to the ID page for each one. So if we click on Ellen, it should take us to one. Perfect, right there. We get a big fat error here. That's because we haven't, filled out any of our show stuff inside of here. So it's just like, I don't know what to do once I get there. But we know that it's working because it's taking us to the right URL. So if we click on Shanita, it should be 2. Benny is going to be 3, and so on. So you see how that's like dynamic. Like we just wrote the code once, really. Like this is what we want to have happen for each trainer, but this, like the name and the ID is dynamic for each one. Like it's just like it just pulls the right one for us because it's just going through our array one at a time. So that's cool. So the next thing we want to do is, we're going here, but nothing works. So the action show could not be found for trainers controller. And so you always want to read your error messages. Typically they'll be pretty helpful. So if let's say we did this and we're like, why isn't it working? Well, we can just go right here and be like, oh, well, the action show could not be found for our trainers controller. Because what we're expecting is when we use get. So when we enter our URL address bar, when we type in or we go to a URL that's /trainers/ an ID number, what Rails is expecting and what it should do is it's like, okay, we're going to go hit the trainers controller and we're going to look and we're going to run the show method. But when it does that, it's like, okay, you go to the trainers controller, but it's like, oh, dang it, there's no show method here. It's telling us exactly what the issue is. It's like we did everything you asked for, but there's no show method. So let's go ahead and add that. Let's do def show. And we've got our end statement there. And for this show, we want to render a component and we want to render a trainer component. This is going to be a new component. So remember, the trainers component, just like it's named accurately, the trainers component is going to show all of the trainers. It's going to display or render onto our webpage all of the trainers. The trainer component, singular, is going to render one trainer, a specific trainer. So that's a really typical convention in naming React components. If you have like, a React component that sort of corresponds to a model in your backend and has a plural on it, that's going to sort of be like the index page for that, where it's going to show all of your trainers or all of your instances of that model. But in this case, we want to show one called trainer. And again, we don't have that created yet. We're going to create that in just a second. But do that, and then we're going to also want to send this guy some props. So we're going to want to send this trainer method the data for the trainer that we clicked on. We don't want to give it all of the trainer data. We just want to give it the data for the specific trainer that the user clicked on in the trainers page. So that's probably, we can kind of guess, we can just call that trainer. That's how we'll access it in our React component. And we're probably going to give it a variable that's going to equal the data for a specific trainer. And that's probably going to be called @trainer. So one thing that I like to do is, you'll notice that as we go through and we fill out all of the standard functions inside of our controller, which is like the index method, the show method, new and edit, update, delete, etc. For a lot of those, we're going to be doing CRUD actions and doing things on a specific trainer. So we're going to need to like set the data for this trainer in a couple of different places inside of this controller. There's a really cool way to do that, where we can use this private keyword. What this does is it allows us to write out some functions that are only available inside of this class. And that's kind of an important concept to know. You don't have to really think about it too much right now, but if you at least know that whenever you create a controller or whenever you create a model, so for example here, that file is really going to be a class. So the Pokemon model file, the Pokemon that are RB, is really just creating a class of Pokemon. And our trainers controller file is really just creating a class called trainers controller. And it's, it's inheriting a bunch of stuff from this thing called application controller, which is a default file or class in Ruby on Rails. It just comes out of the box, but it's basically what allows controllers to do what they do. But we're really just creating a class. And so when you create a class in Ruby, you can have private methods for that class. So that's what we're doing right here. But what we want to do is we want to maybe set a method that is going to set the trainer data for us. And maybe we want to run this function for our class to just set it for all of the functions that we need it set for. Because we have it for show, but we're going to add some others later that we're going to want the trainer data set for us. So so let's define that. The way that we're going to set this is by doing trainer equals, and we're actually going to run a method on our trainer model. So you know how when we do like trainer.all, that's going. So when we do trainer here with a capital T, this is kind of important. What we're referencing is the where's my model? It's right here. This right here. We're referencing that. We're referencing our trainer class, which then in turn, using the application record and this other thing called active record, which you don't need to know about right now, but this in turn corresponds to the table inside of our the database that's named after this. So when we do capital T trainer in Ruby and then call a function on it like .all, what we're really doing is it's going into our database and the table called trainer. It's grabbing all of the rows of data. In other words, all of the trainers for that table. There's a bunch of methods that we can run on those models. And like over time, you'll get more familiar with them. But some of the most common ones are obviously trainer.all or like trainer.first. We're just going to go look at that table. It's going to grab the first row or the first trainer. We can do trainer.last. There's a bunch of stuff we can do. In this case, though, we're going to do a different one. We're going to do trainer.find. And trainer.find is a function that takes an argument. And what it does is it's going to look for a trainer that has whatever results from the argument that we put inside of here. So what we can do is we can add this thing called params, and we're just going to set it to ID. So params is a special function inside of Ruby on Rails. It's set by default. So like if you were to go into like the source code of Ruby on Rails, like how this whole framework works, like this is actually created, Ruby on Rails was created by mainly one guy who goes by the name DHH. It's like an acronym for his name. He's really famous in the coding world. I think he is the CTO of the app Basecamp now, but he's like the Ruby on Rails creator. He's still very active in the scene, and he's always updating Rails. But if you were to look at his code and how he created this, he would have somewhere like def params, you know, and like have an argument, like a bunch of code in there. Like this method, this function is set inside of Rails, so we can use it. So we pass it it looks for this ID. So actually, sorry. So params, it's find is a method. Params itself is not a method actually. Params is just an array, but it's also set inside of Ruby on Rails. And what params is set to is it is basically our URL. It's whatever URL the user is currently on or interacting with in our Ruby on Rails application. So when we say, okay, look at params, which is going to be our URL, look for something called an ID. And that is going to come from our paths here. So for our trainers show, we have this URL, which is trainers/ID. It's going to look at our URL and it's going to say, okay, if you are in your trainer model, which is going to kind of correspond to all of these trainer functions, and you have a trainer URL with trainers/ID, it is going to grab the ID number that's in there and find the trainer that has that ID number. That's kind of how this works. Trainer.find params ID. It's going to look for the ID number of the trainer that we want, pass that to trainer.find, and then it's going to go through our database, find that trainer, and then set it to here. It's going to get all of the data for that trainer and then set it to @trainer. So that's what that's going to do. What we want to do now is we want to set this in our class. We basically want to run this function before anything happens inside of this class. The way that we do that is by using this function inside of Ruby on Rails called before action. And this will run whatever we type here at the very beginning of whenever we first use this model. So what we can do is we can say before action, and then we can call set trainer. And you call it with this like colon and function name syntax. Don't worry too much about why that is. Just for now, just focus on and remember like that's how we need to do it. And I'm always like looking at old projects and documentation because like I forget often like, oh yeah, like I need a colon here and I need a colon there. And it's really helpful to just have some reference up. Oh yeah, okay, like I need to put, you know, these punctuation marks in these places. And eventually you'll kind of start to memorize it, but especially at the beginning, it's really helpful to just, you know, and there's no shame in looking at reference and kind of like copying how it should look. So yeah, so we can set trainer, and then we can actually we can run this set trainer function we can define certain methods in our class, in our controller for it to run on. So we don't want it to run on everything, because then we don't want it to run on index, because index is going to use trainers, which is going to be set to trainer.all. So we don't need @trainer for our index method. So we can skip that one, but we are going to need it for show. So let's go ahead and put that in there. Cool. So now in show, the first thing that's going to happen whenever we run our model is it's going to run set trainer for the show method. So trainer is going to equal whatever trainer has the ID inside of our URL. And now our show method has access to that variable that is going to be set to that information. So when we send our props here, this is going to equal the right trainer. And I'm actually missing something. I need to put props there. Cool. So we'll do that. So that's cool. So let's hit save, and we've got that going. So if we come here, so remember we're at localhost 3000 /trainers/1. If we refresh this, we should get a new error, because before it was like the method or the function show could not be found in your controller. Well, now it's there. And so now, yeah, we're getting a different error now. So we know that we fixed that. And the new error is like, yeah, you likely forgot to export your component from the file it's defined in, which is absolutely true because we don't even have a component. So it's like trying to find a trainer.js file in our components folder, but it can't find it. It can't find anything that's exporting the default trainer. So it's like, I can't find it. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create our trainer file. So let's go ahead and do that. We got trainer, go ahead and import React, and then the const trainer equals that. We're going to return something. I'm just going to maybe just give it a div, maybe an h1. I'm just going to say trainer. And I'm just going to put that there just so I can test it to make sure it works. And just export default trainer. Hit save. Okay, cool. Now we have a trainer component. We're exporting it correctly. So now it should know what to look for, and it should show this file when we go to this URL. Let's click that. Make sure that runs. It takes a minute. Cool. There we go. All right. So now it's working. That's awesome. But right now, this is just like static text, like trainer. It's always going to say that. We can go to 1. Oops, not that. We can go to 2. We can go to 6. I think we have 10 trainers total. And it's just going to show the word trainer. We want to add in the dynamic data. We want to grab the trainer and all of its info based off of this ID. So that, again, is where props come in. So remember, for our show method, we're rendering the component trainer. So that is set to this guy, this trainer component here. We're passing it props. The props are going to be equal to whatever trainer has the ID inside of our URL. And we're going to access that data through the key here, trainer. So we can come to trainer here and we can do props. Now we have access to all of that information. So what I'm going to do is, instead of creating like a separate component, not component, a separate function like render trainer or something, which we could do, but I don't need to do that because I did it last time for trainers because I had to do like some logic. Like I had to like map over some stuff, and I had like a couple return statements inside of here. And it was just a little bit easier to do this than add all of this logic inside of here. I like to keep my component return statements, which are the return statements at the end of our main components. I like to keep those as clean as possible. So if I'm going to have a bunch of like JavaScript logic going on, I like to kind of take that out, create a method inside of my component, and then call that method inside of the return statement for the component. It just kind of cleans that up a little bit. So there's that. So we got trainer. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to, inside of this component, I'm just going to straight up like grab the information that I need. So I'm going to say maybe an h2 tag, and inside of here, I'm going to grab the props.trainer.name. And then maybe beneath that, I'm going to add a break statement here, like that, just to give some space. And then maybe here I'll have a p tag, and maybe I want this to say like hometown. It'll like list out the hometown of this trainer. And I'm going to do props.trainer.location. So I'm going to access that like Pokemon like location that was generated for that trainer. So we can hit save here, and now if we refresh this, let's see if this shows up. So this should show the information for trainer with the ID of 6 and its hometown. All right, cool. So we got Chi Collins, and their hometown is Burbank City. So that's cool. All right, so we can go back to our trainers index page, and now we can click on these. It's going to take us to a show page for that specific trainer, and that's going to show that trainer's name, so we have that here, and that trainer's hometown, which we've got right there. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to put this home text inside of a strong tag. Where's my dog?
Quick question.
Yeah.
So on that, where you were showing their name, hometown, is this where you're also going to be showing the Pokemon that belong to this trainer, or is that could be on a different?
Nope. So I could put that on a separate page if I wanted to, but I actually want to have that here. And so that's going to be the next thing that we do actually.
Okay.
Is how do we get now the Pokemon for this specific trainer to show up on this page? So that's going to be step 2. And there's a little bit too much space there. I'm just going to get rid of one of those break statements. Next here, let's check that out. Should bump up a little bit. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've got that going. Awesome. So let's now figure out how we are going to get the Pokemon for Abraham Rogan on his page, or really for any of these trainers. So the first thing we want to think about when we do that is, okay, the Pokemon data is inside of our database. We need to somehow get that data from our database and get it into this component here. And that's always going to happen through props, right? So the way that we're going to do that, we can go to our trainers controller, and we know, okay, so we have the trainer data here that's being passed. We're also going to want to pass the Pokemon. And I'm going to keep calling it Pokemons in the back end, just so I can kind of keep it the same in my head. So we're going to probably want to pass some Pokemon's data here. And it's going to be equal to a Pokemon's variable. And that variable should hold all of the Pokemon that belong to that specific trainer. So we haven't set this up yet, but we know like we're going to want to do this. Like we're going to want to be able to, in here, use props and get access to like, props dot Pokemon. We want to get access to all those Pokemon so we can show those here. So let's go back to our trainers controller, and we need to figure out how are we going to set Pokemon here. The way that I'm going to do that is like this, and this is what's so cool about Ruby on Rails, because it's really just Ruby. Like you can just do Ruby stuff in it. So I'm going to create a Pokemon variable. So that is going to be that. So we need, I think it would be Pokemon, sorry. That's going to be that. And this needs to somehow get we need to get access to the Pokemon that belong to this trainer, right? The trainer whose ID is inside of the parameter, inside of that URL. So we already have the trainer, right? We know the trainer. We have the ID. We know who it is. So we can do trainer, and then it's super easy. We can just do dot Pokemon. That is going to get us access to the Pokemon that belong only to that specific trainer. So let's actually, so we did that. We're passing those props. what I'm going to do is just test that out. I'm going to do a console.log, and I'm going to now pull off those Pokemon. I think I call it Pokemon. Yeah, Pokemon. Okay. So I just want to make sure that that's working. So I want to look at that in my console. So let's pull up our console here, pull it over there. Let's refresh the page and let's see if we can get that to pull up in our console here. Sweet, there we go. Okay, here's the 5 Pokemon that belong to Ellen Ledner. Awesome, okay. So we don't want that to just be in our console though, right? Like we want that to be on the web page. So because the Pokemon here, this is going to be like multiple Pokemon inside of this variable. So we know that that's going to be probably in an array of hashes. We can double check it though. If we're ever like not sure, we can double check it by coming here. So we know it's an array, and we know that at the index of each item in this array, it's a hash. So index 0 is this hash. Index 1 is that hash. So we know it's an array of hashes, which should kind of trigger something in our mind like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff we can do with arrays. One of which is we can map over those arrays and return specific JSX for each Pokemon in that array. So we're going to create another function because this one's going to have some logic in it. I don't want to do all that in here, although I could, but I don't want to because it looks very dirty. And eventually you're going to have some components with a lot of logic going on, a lot of functions, and you don't want that in your return method. So I'm going to create a function. I'm just going to call this render Pokemon. I'm just going to call it Well, I'm going to do Pokemon so that I can differentiate in the code between singular and plural. So I really know, like when I read, like if I were to just read render Pokemon, just reading that, I wouldn't know if it was going to render a single Pokemon or a bunch of Pokemon. So I want it to be explicit. So I'm just going to add the Pokemon. So now when I read this in my code, I can read it anywhere in my code and be like, okay, this is going to render more than one Pokemon. So we'll do that. And remember, it's equals, do that, our arrow symbol, curly braces. And now we can map over our props.Pokemon. So remember when you do return statement, props.Pokemon.map. I'm going to call each individual Pokemon a Pokemon, arrow, do that. And then I just want to return some JSX. And for each Pokemon, I think, what do I have? What do we have, these guys? We have a name, a move, and then a level for each Pokemon. So I'm going to do a div. Oops. Like that. Don't need that. Got my div. And then inside of that div, maybe I want to do like an H3 tag. And I want it to, whoa, sorry, that's my dog. He probably needs to go out. Do that. And so I'm going to do Pokemon.name. Close that off. Cool. Then I want to do a P tag, and I want to say like move, and then give it my Pokemon.move, and then maybe say shadow. No, but do that, and then do level, and do Pokemon.level. That cool. All right, sweet. So now and I'm actually going to do a break here. Actually, do I want to do? I think so. Yeah. Just so I can add some space between each Pokemon once they get listed. So I did that. Cool. So now underneath the word hometown, maybe I want to list the Pokemon for this person. So maybe now I'll do, so outside of this P tag, I'm going to add a break, space, and then I'm going to call my render Pokemon method like that. So we got Pokemon name, move, level, cool. All right, sweet. So we'll hit save. Over here, hit fresh. And loading. All right, sweet. All right, so now we have the Pokemon for Ellen Ledner, Magikarp, Venonat. Nidorina, whatever. Cool. So let's actually go back to our trainers and let's just check that it works with another one. So Shnita has an Articuno, an Eakins, a Ditto, whatever. Go back. Joshua, so Scyther, Nidorina, Mr. Mime, etc. So cool. So we know this is working. We have the we're listing the 5 Pokemon that belong to each of the trainers on their show page. Any questions about that?
Nope. That Joshua's got some strong Pokemon there.
Yeah, he got 93, 75. This guy's a little weak. But yeah, this guy's kicking some Pokemon butt.
So are we going to be making a Pokemon component page, or do we not need to do it due to the way you were putting it on the trainer page?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I really hesitate to ever say, yeah, you should make that page. Because what it really comes down to is what you want your app to do and to look like. If you want to have a page that lists out all of the Pokemon, you can do that. If you don't have to. That's kind of like where like the creativity sort of comes in. So for example, if we go back here, I think I actually have a button for view all Pokemon right there, right? It's not working currently, but that to me, if I have that, maybe I do want to have a page that lists all of the Pokemon, like regardless of like what trainer they belong to. I just want to list all of the Pokemon that currently, belong to any of the trainers in my database. I could do that. And if you go to the routes here, what that would be a Pokemon index route, right? However, we don't like our Pokemon's index route is set up right now to belong to a certain trainer. Like we don't have a route right now that can grab all of the Pokemon, period, like regardless of who the trainer is. But that's something that we could do. So maybe we can do that just right now really quick and like the last little bit. Because that's probably something that you guys haven't done yet. And I think it'd be cool to look at. So that's where, okay, we want to go into the Pokemon controller right here. So we haven't really dealt with the Pokemon controller. We've been doing everything inside of the trainer's controller. That's because so far, everything has kind of been connected to the trainers, even the Pokemon, right? Like we're doing this like Pokemon index, but it's like based off of the trainer. Like we've got to have a trainer ID, and then we get the Pokemon for that specific trainer. If we just want to deal with the Pokemon like at large, like all of them together, I'm going to actually create a custom method in here. So it's going to kind of fall outside of the basic index, create, new, edit, show, update, etc. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because technically I would want this to be the index method, right? However, if you look at the index method is tied to this URL. And like, I don't really want it. So like ideally in my website, in my app, when I go to localhost 3000/trainers, it makes sense that this would list out all the trainers, right? So it's like semantically, like it just makes sense. Like this URL, like this is kind of what we would expect. What we wouldn't expect is if we follow this URL path, so if we do like trainers / let's say trainer ID 1 / Pokemon, which is stupid, but whatever, / Pokemons, oops, where are we? Here we go, / Pokemons. So we wouldn't expect for this URL to list out every single Pokemon in our Pokedex, right? Because we're adding a specific like trainer ID here. Like I would type in this URL, which is automatically generated for us here because of the way we set up our routes right here, because these are nested. all of our Pokemon routes are going to be dependent on a trainer. So the only Pokemon index route that we have is this one, which is dependent on a trainer. And like, so this index route, like this, like having trainer /1 /Pokemon to list all of our Pokemon just like doesn't make sense. Like what I really want is I want like localhost 3000 /Pokemon. I would like to go to that URL and see all of my Pokemon. So maybe what we could do is set up some custom stuff. So the first thing that we need to do is we want a route that is this, that is /Pokemon. And maybe we'll do Pokemon just to keep it, you know, the same for us. If we were really making this app, we would need to make a decision probably on like how we'd want to treat the singularity and plurality of the word Pokemon. But in this case, we're just going to disregard that. Pokemon is one Pokemon. Pokemons is multiple Pokemon for now. But yeah, so we need a route that does this, but we don't have that route here, right? So let's go ahead and let's create that route. So I'm not gonna lie, I can't remember the exact syntax for this, so I'm gonna kind of look it up. So I'm gonna come in here. Actually, I wonder if there's a good one in here. I'm gonna route. Let's see, where's that? Rails route. All right, so we've got like the root one in there. I want the one where you can create a custom get. Do get people new. Okay, cool. All right, so we can do this. So there are many ways to find routes for your application. Here are a few. Get people /new. Okay, that's what we want. We want to use the get keyword, the HTTP verb get, because someone's going to be typing this into their the URL box, or they're going to be clicking on a link that's going to take them to this URL. So we want get, and then we want our Pokemon controller, and then we want a method there. So let's go ahead and do get, and then what was it? In quotes, controller /function. So in quotes, controller is going to be the Pokemon's controller / then the function. So remember, we don't want to do the index function because by default, inside of our, where is it? Pokemon's controller, let me just finish filling it out. This index method is going to be, it's tied to this URL. The like Pokemon, like the index method and the Pokemon's controller is tied here. We want like a whole new method and a whole new route. So I'm going to actually just create a custom method in here. I'm going to call it def. I'm going to say all Pokemon. Let's do all Pokemon. Well, we'll do all Pokemon. Cool. So now in our routes, I can say, if I can find it, routes, I can say, okay, get Pokemon's controller and look for the all Pokemon function or method. So we now added this to our route. So if we refresh this page, we should see this. Okay, sweet, there it is. So, oh, sorry, we actually want to do Pokemon. Okay, this is okay. It's not like perfect, but that's okay. So what this says is we just added a route that's this, get Pokemon's all Pokemon. I actually wonder if we can do that differently. Can we do get, let me see, go here, get people. Wow, what is that supposed to do? Let me try doing it this way. Like that. Let me see what that does. Save, come back to our routes, refresh it. Get, okay, controller key on route. Please check your route. Get Pokemon's all Pokemon. Okay, so I'm honestly not exactly sure how to do that right now off the top of my head. I'd have to like spend some time just like looking it up. I don't want to like waste all your time doing that. Because I don't know how, it could take me 2 minutes, it could take me 20 minutes, I don't know. But yeah, we'll just do this for now because this gets it done. This does what we wanted to do because it gives us a new URL that we can use, which kind of makes sense. If we go to like our website /Pokemon /all Pokemon, that's pretty semantically accurate that, you know, that URL would show us all of our Pokemon. And when we go to the URL, it's going to hit our Pokemon's controller, and it's going to hit our all Pokemon's function. So let's go back to our Pokemon's controller. And we need to fill this guy out now because it's going to hit our controller and run this function. But right now, this function is just doing nothing. So I'm going to create a variable and call all Pokemon. I'm going to set it equal to Pokemon.all. Then I want to render a component, and I want to render the Pokemon component, and I want to send it some props. And those props, I want to be we'll reference it through the word Pokemon, and it's going to be equal to our Pokemon variable, which holds all of our Pokemon. Cool. Okay. So now we have like a pretty good function here inside of our controller. It's going to render this like, React component for us, and we're going to send it these props. So that's cool. Now we just need to create that that actual component, that JS file. So we'll do touch Pokemon.js, bring that up. Cool. Let's just fill this out really quick just to make sure it works. Const Pokemon equals that. Return. Just do a div. I'm going to say h1 all Pokemon. And then let's make sure that we export this. Oh my gosh, port. I cannot type today. Default Pokemon, hit save. Okay, so now we've got, just a really bare bones React component here, but that's fine. And yeah, so now basically, if we go to this URL, this should work for us. So let's try it. Let's go to an extra slash there, Pokemon/all Pokemon. Go there. See if it works. Unless we have a bug somewhere. Cool. All right. All Pokemon. Cool. So this is going to show us all of our Pokemon. That's awesome. So now what we want to do is we would need to get access to all of our actual Pokemon through props. So remember the way we do that, we got to access the props through the argument here. And then because we're going to be mapping over all of our Pokemon and rendering out JSX for each one, I'm going to write all that logic in a separate function. So I'm going to call this const and the Pokemon equals like that. And we're going to do return props dot Pokemon dot map, and we're just going to call this Pokemon, give an arrow function like that, and then return parentheses, and let's just give it a div, and we'll give like an h3, and we'll give this the Pokemon dot name, and that should be good enough for now. So after all Pokemon, we're going to run this function. So render Pokemon, save. And now we hit refresh. We should get every single Pokemon, all 50 Pokemon here. Cool. There they are, all 50 of them. So now all we have to do to kind of link this up, like logically, with like the way our app works, is like we go all the way back to the home page, and ideally, like we don't have any navigation right now, like on our site. Like we'd want to set that up too, where we can click back to the home page and etc. But yeah, we want to set this button up so that it goes to that page. So the last thing we would do is we would go to home.js. We've got this view all Pokemon. Let's just wrap that in an H tag or an A tag with an href. And I think it's Pokemon / all Pokemon like that. And then I'm going to grab that closing A tag and just throw that at the end here. Oops. Format it there, hit save. Now, if we refresh this, we'll let those changes update. Now, if we click that, it should take us to our all Pokemon page. So cool. Yeah, so that's how you would do that.
And to go back, you just have to put redirect to and then put the root or whatever. Correct.
When you say go back, you mean like
To the
from
main
here?
page. Yeah, to the main one where it says, yeah, right there. So when
Mhm.
you're done with the Pokemon like view, it can
Mhm.
return you back to that page. It
Yeah,
doesn't
there's
redirect.
there's a bunch of stuff that you could do. What I would do maybe is like I would start maybe trying to create some kind of like a nav. So maybe what I would do is, and we'll just go till like 6:30, and we'll continue this next week too. So this won't be the end of the Pokemon, but what I might do is, so we have our all Pokemon here. Maybe I want to add like a button, right? So we'll just give a button. We'll say like back to home, like that, right? And then do another PR like that. So if we just look at this now, when we come to this page, we can have a little button at the top maybe that we can click that'll like take us back to home. You know, and maybe we can make it explicit, like I can't remember the ASCII symbol for back. We won't worry about that, but let's refresh this. Let's see, why didn't that render it? Save, refresh. Where's my button? One sec, button. Why isn't that rendering? Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. There we go. Okay. If somebody has this button back to home, and like what we could do is like I could just wrap this in an A tag. Href equals, and just give it the slash. That slash is going to equal, that's going to base, that's like kind of a shorthand for just your root. So you hit save, and then we can refresh this. And then when it loads, I can click that, and that'll take us back home. So now we can kind of like, go back and forth. And what I could do is like, I could add that button to like every single one of my pages. Like this is like an extremely like copy pastable, like little bit of code here. So like I can just add this like above like all my pages like that. Now we got one on trainers. So we refresh this. Cool, now I got that on trainers. So we can go to trainers, go back to home. We can even add it to our trainer page. So that's like a really like, I mean, super simple nav bar, but yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah,
No, if I ask more, we'll keep you here too late.
no, I will take one more question. How about that? How about that?
I know. Am I the only one here yet? Or anyone else have a question?
Oh, see, Raphael, I saw your question in Slack just now. Hi, when you render the browser with the React code, your favicon shows a React icon. I know it's because you have to see React code, but in my browser, I can't see it. Yeah, so that is because, man, like, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. So I like set that up essentially to do that. And I didn't actually set it up on purpose. It was kind of an accident. And I did it when I was doing my final project for like when I was a student. And it kind of, I don't know how, but like it like saved, it like remembered, like Chrome remembered sort of. So like I wouldn't worry about that. When you guys do like a final project and stuff, like you will add your own like favicon and stuff, but this isn't like a React specific thing, even though it is showing like the React symbol there. So yeah. So that's that. So I know we didn't get to like any really of like the real CRUD actions. Like we got to the reads, but we didn't get to like add or create or update or destroy. Those are kind of the next steps. And obviously those are a little bit complicated than just showing things, but they're not really that complicated. it all really comes down to using your routes that all these, get auto-generated whenever you run your resources here. Like the resources is like a little like code snippet that just generates all of the basic CRUD function and route URLs for you for each of those models. If you nest it inside of one, that's going to make the nested one dependent upon the model above it. And then just knowing how when you go to this URL, knowing how that connects to Rails. Like for example, if you go to this URL, that's going to take, like in Rails, it's going to hit this controller and run that function. That function is what really determines what happens. So for example, just a little review, when you do trainers, like localhost 3000/trainers, it's going to hit the trainers controller, which is right here. And it's going to run the index function, which is this function. This is what really determines what happens. So we set, a variable here to trainers, which is going to equal all of our trainers. We're going to actually render out a component, which we created over here, and we're going to pass that component props. Those props are coming from, this variable that we set here, and then this component runs, gets thrown up on our web page, etc. So that, if you can understand that at this point, that's going to really, really take you a long way. It's really, really good to kind of know how that all connects. So, but next week, yeah, we can go over more of the CRUD actions and yeah, all that. So if that is it, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.